Hello, public art historians. So this week, we are going to explore performance art in public spaces. So performance art gives us that additional challenge of including a real-time and human aspect to interpreting art. So performance art, in terms of how we're going to discuss it, really has its roots in the mid 20th century. So if we think about that, it's really a relatively new way for artists to communicate their ideas. One of the things I'd like to emphasize here is that our tools for observing and interpreting art still apply. We're going to look at these artworks through the lens of their subject matter, their form, and their context. And I gave you an example in this week's lecture for the performance of Janine Antoni, who used black hair dye to mop the floor of a gallery with her hair to critique traditional women's roles and to critique traditional beauty standards for women. Um, one of the articles that I'm asking you to read this week, it's called Why Performance Art Matters, talks about performance art as a very figurative kind of artwork because the artists or the people that they hire are generally the main subject matter for their performances. So the artist usually uses additional props or different set designs or creatures through puppets. They use nature, they use different environments or other actors to just so that they can engage us in some kind of different social discourses. So one of the things I just want to say is that we've been looking at other public artworks that accomplish the same thing. So when we looked at artworks like the National Memorial for Peace and Justice, right? That created a discourse around racism and lynching. And then we had photographs like Migrant Mother that created conversations and discourse and encouraged people to take action to support those starving migrant working families during the Great Depression. So the article Why Performance Art Matters also talks about the differences between performance art and theater performances. So they say that performance art isn't necessarily any more meaningful than story-based theater. It's just that performance artworks have a different focus, and that focus doesn't always have a clear storyline. So we're going to be on the lookout for some metaphors or some different symbolism. We're going to see how they'd use different custom props and different word choices to make their performances more meaningful. So when you're talking about the subject matter, just kind of like think about those other things that they do to develop their stories and their performances. So, similar to last week, it's going to be interesting that as we start to look at public artworks that begin to kind of move away from those traditional sculptures and murals, our tools of observation and interpretation still apply. Again, we're going to continue to think about performance art in terms of subject matter, form, and context, and we're going to use what we find out about them to help us figure out our interpretations. And then again, similar to last week's look at interactive art, performance art also has a big impact in the public art world because these artworks really are wanting to break down those barriers between people and art. One of the things I would say about performance art is it just might be a little bit more uncomfortable because we're right there in terms of that performance. Um, please note that these performance artworks still address those significant social issues and you're going to see that in this week's choices of public artworks in terms of The Great White Way, which is a performance by the artist William Popel, who explores the difficulty of achieving success in America as a Black man. We're also going to look at the Guerrilla Girls, whose work challenges the predominance of artwork of white male artists that are in the prominent gallery and museum art shows. We're going to look at the Blue Bus Project, where the artist Annalisa Iadiccio takes art to the streets to make it more accessible to children. And we're going to look at Vermont's own Bread and Puppet Theater that gives voice to the most pressing social, political, and economic issues in America today through their incredible puppetry while also serving up some sourdough bread. So in this week's lecture, I included 4 articles for you to read that's going to help you better understand the performance aspect of this kind of art and how the performance part gives it meaning. I'm also going to ask you to watch 2 pretty brief videos about Black Mountain College in North Carolina. It places what really established the beginning of performance art during the mid 20th century. One of the things I would say is it's interesting to note how world events also shaped this college and the resulting performance artworks. Some of the most important teachers at this college were people who escaped from Germany because of the rise of the Nazi Party during the 1930s. Again, be sure to read my analysis of Jean Antoni's Performance, Love, and Care and watch the associated video. It just gives you, it's just a video of her performance. And this example should help you develop your analysis of one of the performances for this week's discussion. As always, please be sure to be respectful for all your discussions and assignments this week. And just as a reminder, your first draft of your analysis for your choice of public artwork for the final project is due this week. I just want to say again, y'all are doing just a great job thinking about all the different ways that public art has meaning for us. Please keep up the very thoughtful work and be sure to email me if you have any questions.